The feeling of being an outsider is profoundly and painfully apparent.
You stick out more if you're different, and not just ethnicity or race-wise.
Race was brought up in a conversation, and that was the first time that I looked around and realized that I was the only non-white person in that class.
But I think we have not yet taken the next step, which is inclusion. We've invited all these people to the dance, right? But no one's asking them to dance yet.
What kind of world is it that we're living in? I mean, in our community still to this day, it's a world that is dominated by white men in leadership. But I do want my children to understand that those aren't the only people who could be leaders.
We have different pockets all over campus of diverse units or ethnicity. But how do we come together, get all the players involved, and truly integrate? Or we'll just be a university that said, yeah, we're diversified.
Racial classification and categorization is a present-day reality in the sort of American experience. In many ways, the United States is the greatest experiment in pluralism the world has ever seen. No other civilization has attempted to bring this many different kinds of people together in proximity with the promise of a better future and a united kind of life together.
I grew up, most of my life I grew up in downtown San Jose, which is a big city. And if you went down one street, you would be in the Vietnamese neighborhood. If you went down the other street, you'd be in the Mexican neighborhood. If you went down the other street, you would be in the black neighborhood. And down the other street was all the old white people that lived there for way back in the day. Growing up around color, that was my whole life. I was shocked when I moved to Indiana because it was different here. And that part of it has been an adjustment. It's changing slowly over time, but when I first got here, you kind of noticeably realize, wow, we're in a very different place than maybe some other big cities or certainly out on some of the coasts.
We didn't move to Valparaiso immediately after I got this job, and we weren't sure, and we had heard stories of what people had experienced here. On the one hand, you're rubbing shoulders with people who are different from you, but on the other hand, at the end of the day, people go back to neighborhoods that are very segregated by race and by class. And, I heard people saying, oh, you don't go to that part of the city. Oh, you don't go to that part of the city. Stick to this neighborhood. Stick close to the university.
Well, some of my mentors was very concerned about me coming to work at Valpo just because they said it's predominantly white. There's not a lot of people that look like you out there as smart and intelligent as you are. I don't know if Valparaiso is a place that you want to work. And I just remember thinking to myself, what would it be like if I brought Leslie to a game, or if I brought Leslie on campus and they realized that she was white? Would that make people treat me differently, or how would people feel about that? And that was a big concern of mine.
When I first moved out here, in 95, 96 to where it is now is like leaps and bounds different. But even then, I remember we'd drive around and it's like, oh my God, I think I think there's a black guy, or there's a Mexican woman.
There's been occasions, I guess, when I've wondered, what do our neighbors think? Like, do they assume we're roommates? Do they assume we're together? We often get told we must be sisters. So I just came out to our bricklayer the other day.
Do we look like sisters?
So after I came out to the bricklayer, just saying, no, she's my girlfriend. She's not my sister. She's my partner. It didn't hit me until maybe like 10 minutes later. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's going to have a response to being a business that is serving a gay couple. I had no reason to think he was religious in any particular way, but I was like, oh wow, I just never even thought about that.
First time I stepped foot on campus, I don't know, it just felt comfortable, felt like a place I can call home. I didn't want to stay in Chicago, I just wanted to get a feel for something else. Growing up, I was always like around blacks and African Americans and whatnot, so I wanted to kind of get out of my comfort zone and learn how to work with other people.
I came to Valpo because it was close to home, and because the campus, it looked friendly.
Mine's a different story, actually. Valparaiso was not one of my top schools. I wasn't well informed on it. I did come I was part of a college preparatory class in my high school where we fundraised a trip to Indiana, or the Midwest, to visit colleges, and Valparaiso was one of them. I met a lot of African Americans. We were really cool, but the difference was that location-wise that I didn't feel comfortable with. You know, me coming from a neighborhood that's considered, you know, the hood, and just trying to find someone with the same mentality and something that they can relate to me is something I didn't find here in Valpo. I kind of met a lot of people from suburbia. Not that that's a problem, it's just that it was something different, something I wasn't used to.
I came here and I just felt more at home. I felt like more comfortable here because the small school environment just, you know, made me feel like, okay, my professors will actually know me, not just by a number in my class, but actually my name and my face. And then I'll be able to find, I felt like I'd be able to find a good group of friends here who, you know, had similar things in common with me, similar experiences.
And I remember walking on campus and I'm just standing there and I literally did not see any black people or African American students. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, and I am the only one on this campus. And part of me just wanted to run and just leave, but I stuck it out. And as I stayed through the day, I saw more African American students.
You don't realize the differences until you step to a class, and then most of my classes, I realized, oh, I'm the only black female in here. And then when you go around and where are you from? And I'm from Gary, Indiana, and we all know the stereotypes that people have on Gary. So one girl actually asked me, like, had I ever been shot before? And, oh, it must be a pretty tough city, and et cetera. So it makes you feel like, okay, these people really don't know you. So then you get that pressure of you have to kind of stand up for not only your race, but the place where you're from, so people realize the stereotypes and statistics aren't the truth.
It's about a 24 hours journey from my home country. And I was also feeling anxious about the environment of this institution because I am now competing in the international platform now, because previously I was competing in the domestic platform. And English is not my first language. So I was worried about how I will cope up with this changing environment. And the education system is totally different from my country.
I came here in 2012 for the first time as a high school student, just getting college experience, what it's going to be like away from my country. And those 3 weeks were so much fun. I met high school students from Ecuador, Pakistan, Mongolia, and Venezuela. There were so many students, and I made so many different friends. And though that was my first introduction to Valpo, even then they were so welcoming, and nothing changed after that. They were still so welcoming, and they were so happy that I made my decision to come to Valpo. And I think that helped me more, that I came here before because I knew what this place was going to be like. So the culture shock was a little less. So I knew what I was going to.
When we just came to Valpo, we find the apartment, I don't say the apartment's name. They ask us to pay the whole year's rent, so they rent the house to us. We don't have enough money to pay it, so we can't live.
He told me that we don't have enough income. They don't trust us, so they asked us to pay the whole year.
Why do you feel that they asked you to pay money up front? Because you're an international student, or?
We feel sad.
Yeah, maybe I think
we don't
so.
know
Maybe.
how to solve it.
Yeah, I think maybe we are international students.
How did that make you feel?
Well, I think maybe they have their reasons, but I think it's difficult for us, so we have to change another plan.
When we saw the opportunity to kind of have family working together, we saw that as a blessing. And when I saw the opportunity of an endowed chair, that's like a gold standard in academic circles. That was a huge opportunity. And when we saw the opportunity to have our son go to school here and play football, Division I football, and for us to kind of be together more, that was part of the opportunity. And when we factored in the reputation of Valparaiso University, which, you know, I know as a Lutheran pastor, Valparaiso has always been on the kind of progressive edge. And so I was excited about all of that. I've lived in probably 6 cities across the U.S., and there's no place where we as a family have experienced as much direct racism and where we as individuals have palpably experienced not being welcome. So the feeling of being an outsider is profoundly and painfully apparent. There was a pickup truck driving down the street, and a woman in the passenger seat yells out, "Hey, Bob, you ain't got no shoes, Bob?" This younger white woman says to our son. And he came back in the house and he says, "Who's Bob?" And we kind of looked at each other knowingly, and we said, "Oh, nothing, nobody." It was probably a case of mistaken identity.
He was hurt that prejudice and racism is prevalent, that it exists.
We first realized, like, this is like a real relationship that we're in. It was like, are we gonna be out? Like, we had to kind of think through it on campus. Like, is this going to be okay? Is it going to jeopardize our jobs? Like, will it impact how students can see us or respect us? And I talked to someone who at the time knew a former faculty from when I was a student, so back in the late 80s, early 90s, who had felt it was completely unsafe for her to come out without losing her job. And I was like, whoa, like, I don't really feel that. I mean, I heard Liz saying that she felt uncomfortable and uncertain.
The culture has changed a lot. So I was still, in some ways, living in what Valpo was like in the 90s, and definitely still living in what the city was like to me in those 2 instances, which was not safe. So I think that that was a big part of it.
A lot of the times, through my experiences here, I've had experiences where, you know, people talk about the student groups in the OMP, and all they like to say is that we're known for having fun. And you want to get educated on Latinos, you go to Live. You want to get educated on black students, you go to Black Student Organization, etc. When in reality, it's more than that, and that intersectionality that we have with each other, with the different organizations that we have on campus. So it's more than just learning about what being a Latino is. It's how does my race play in action with or share commonalities with a black student, an Asian student.
When I first started, we were called Asian American Association, and it seemed a little bit more inclusive. You know, like you have to be Asian or Asian American just to be in the group. We have a domestic perspective where people who are of Asian descent have lived in America for all their lives, you know, and they hear about all the stories about their families and what they do, and try to incorporate that. So there is an international aspect to it, and in a way that we're taking this culture and bringing it here. But also, like, there's a domestic perspective where our experiences is shaped around what our parents say and what they do at home and how we do it based on, like, how they learn in their culture and how they got passed on to us.
We try to reach out to as many people as we can, and we even advertise ourselves as, oh, it's not only for Asian Americans, it's not only for Asians, it's not only for us, it's for anyone who appreciates Asian culture, who wants to get involved and try to educate campus.
I would say having a presence on campus is very important for prospective students, because even though I didn't find the actual organization until like a few months after we started school, I knew that we had one, and that's something I looked into when I was looking up schools. I searched out on the school website just to make sure there is a group of people who are like understanding, like, and just like who are advocating for the LGBTQ community. I think that's very important to make sure that we are here and we are having presence, saying that like Valpo cares about the community, and in that sense, when people see us, I hope they see us as a group of students who are supporting, educating, and advocating for the LGBTQ community.
That's our mission statement, to support, educate, and advocate for the LGBTQ plus community on campus. And and we do that all sorts of ways. We support in our general meetings and like during social events. We have educational events all year long. And we've also done a lot of advocacy for the queer community on campus.
One of the advisors, he just told me, like, yeah, you should come to this meeting, and I kind of trusted him. I didn't really know what the meeting was about. He just told me, like, yeah, you're going to have fun, it's going to be informative, so I showed up. And that was, like, one of the first times I was in a room where, like, where everybody kind of looked like me on Valpo, and I know that kind of felt good. So, like, after that, like, just coming to that room, that environment where, like, I can be around a bunch of people, like, twice a month that looked like me, you know, it kind of felt good. It kind of, like, made me feel like I was back at home in Chicago.
Imagine you're the white person. Like, sometimes you go to interview for a job, and if they automatically see that I'm brown, they might have their own prejudices about me, and that may affect the way that they're thinking about me throughout the whole course of the interview, regardless of my level of vocabulary, my level of experience.
Oftentimes in BU that we ignore or not talk about, you know, the different stereotypes, privileges, classism, racism that happens on campus on a daily basis, even if it's like little, like microaggressions. And that's why I wanted to make that event, so that we could pull in all the organization's efforts into one, so that it shows us that we're united, and that it shows us that, like, that we're open to the different types of discussions, and, you know, we're going to be welcoming about it if we do it in the proper manner. And, you know, I want to start the discussion about, you know, like, should we judge someone, and then start the discussions on the different stereotypes, the different microaggressions, all that's happening on campus, so that, you know, like, people start talking about it instead of just ignoring it and push it off to the side.
The stories that I done heard from Louise or Vince and Antoine, like, you actually get to see life from a different perspective. So that's some things that you wouldn't see all the time in a meeting. And I think it's good that we actually know people from different cultures, and we can get to see the world from their point of view. So I think it's actually cool, like, having conversations with them.
We're trying to build a community where it's accepting, and you wouldn't be so accepting if you don't actually go for your word and say, yeah, we're diverse because we have this office. You should expand on that. You should say we're diverse because we have a group of students that have a lot to offer, who are not only involved with the office, but also do great academically.
Interesting how so I get this feeling a lot that just because you're a person of color of a certain descent, suddenly that makes you an expert of everything that has to do. So people ask me, oh, I've got a question about China. I'm like, I don't know. Or I got a question about Japan. You know anything? Carl, you're Asian. You know anything about that? And not even students, but even like professors will ask me, hey, Carl, you're Asian. I'm sure you'll enjoy this or something. I'll be like, oh, sure.
We get a lot of students that might be from areas that don't
don't have a lot of diversity. They're not used to interacting with people of different faiths, different cultures, different walks of life. And every college sees it as an opportunity to give those students that kind of an experience. And Valpo, they might recognize, we might not be as diverse, as people that come from like areas that we've come from, and they're trying to do so.
There's opportunity there for students to get involved if they want to. That's any student on Valparaiso University's campus. Again, it's about taking the initiative and doing so, and then diving in 100% and not just 50%, not 75%, but you have to put your all into it.
You'll have those people who will go against what we're trying to do, who will see it in the different way, and I believe it's our job to try to convince those people that what we're doing is for the best for the university, and what we're doing here is good.
We do a good job at initially inviting people to join us here at campus. It's just making it more inclusive in general and to find ways to cross those barriers. And I think that would make us a better school overall.
No one person can know everything that goes on and really appreciate, all the work that different students are doing, because there's just so much. But being in Student Senate, you can see a glimpse of a whole lot that is going on because of the different students that are involved and that come to us.
I feel like there's certain individuals and groups that are very conservative, and they don't like to see change, and they see all this, and they see like an increased enrollment of colored individuals on campus, and they're going to complain about it.
We can only do so much. I mean, there's others that have to be willing to get on board with us and educate themselves on what the issues actually are and what needs to be done to make a difference or to change things.
And if you look at the numbers, we know that right now we're most successful at diversifying the student body. We've been much less successful with the faculty, and we have been less successful with the staff, and certainly also with the higher administration. We've got work to do at just the level of recruiting diverse talent into the institution, especially on the employee side. It's not just about getting people here, because it's one thing to hire somebody, and it's another thing to make sure that this is a place where they want to stay. And so I think we have work to do on that front too, at both the level of I think our retention at the student level is okay. But I think we still have work to do at the level of on the employee side in terms of making people feel like this is a place that they want to be.
There's no question diversity is happening to us. Diversity is happening to the nation. Diversity is happening globally. So then, since it's happening, we need to figure out what does that mean in terms of the kind of environment that we create and the kind of infrastructure that supports it.
In my little world of my team and my locker room and my family, that as we've gotten more diverse, we've become better. And so I think my experience says that the more diverse we become, the better we get. And I think that would be true if we expanded it outward.
But my thing with diversity is pushing for inclusion. We need to encourage people to step outside of their comfort zones and encourage them to go and meet other people. Because having that diversity here means nothing if those people aren't aware of it, or if they don't acknowledge it, if they don't learn from it.
And so I just find it kind of funny how they preach, diversity, we embrace it, we celebrate it, but then when you step on foot on campus, you don't really see them putting, supporting what they're actually preaching to people, and I think that has to change.
Valparaiso University has done a 100% great job at diversity. We're about 10% as far as integration. We have different pockets all over campus of diverse units or ethnicity, but how do we come together? And MLK is one day where we all come together, but we need to, and I said this before, get on this race, get all the players involved, and truly integrate, or we'll just be a university that said, yeah, we're diversified. We have to get a diverse pool of candidates, applications on the table, and go from there, or we will continue to see faculty especially not represent the student body.
I would like to see people in senior administration have people of color. I would love to see senior administration have different sexualities. Once you have that start to happen, then you can have positive effect, and then you can have an inclusive environment. That takes time. You're going to have to recruit the people. After you get them here, you're going to have to retain them. So that doesn't just start with bringing outsiders in. That starts with working with the people we have currently here to change some of their mindsets and their cultures.
As we go from this transition, through this transition of becoming an increasingly diverse campus, how do we not just become a campus that's very diverse but also very segmented? How do we become a campus that's diverse and fostering a kind of flourishing life in community with people who are in fact different from you?
In my view, if we do well by this question, in 5 to 10 years, we will be living out our mission of a university founded in the Lutheran tradition where people of various and diverse backgrounds come and meet and work together. And we will have not lost sight of any of those things, and we will have figured out not only how to think about the fact that the Lutheran Christian identity of this institution is an asset toward diversity, but we will have, I think, maybe equally critical, if not more critical, we will have figured out how to communicate that in a convincing way to people who share none of the antecedent ideas that contribute to that vision. I think Valparaiso is well positioned, the university is well positioned to be a leader, and I think that continuing commitment and continuing investment and continuing intentionality will get us there.